Welcome to Part 8 of the reproductive system. In this case, we're beginning with the female reproductive anatomy and physiology. And we're on page 1035. We have this fabulous overview here, mid-sagittal section with a view from the lateral aspect with a little bit of extra placed in there. But we're actually going to begin right here on the underlined material under the rubric Anatomy of the Female Reproductive System. So we're beginning with here ovaries, which are the female gonads, are the primary reproductive organs of the female, and like the male, testes, which are, of course, homologous with female ovaries, serve the dual purpose of providing both hormones and gametes. In this case, females work with multiple molecules, estrogen, progesterone, and in fact, estrogen is really just a huge, vast summary of molecules, estradiol, estrone, estriol, and they indicate here that estradiol is the most prevalent in the human. And but nevertheless, it's a family of molecules. Progesterone, a little bit more macho than your average testosterone. Estrogen is more to the leading edge, creating synergy with many other molecules. For instance, you cannot have effective oxytocin function without estrogen first creating or stimulating the receptors for oxytocin. Similarly, estrogen and progesterone work together, whereas estrogen is sort of like the priming agent. Then when progesterone comes in the second half of the cycle, the monthly cycle, then their synergy together creates differentiation and development in ways that we'll get to see and enjoy. But first, the basic structures here are listed in this presentation. And you can see that, first of all, unlike the male, the female has, first of all, a urinary bladder a little bit bigger than the male's, and a very straight urethra that is dedicated to the purpose of urination and nothing else. Okay, so this is the anterior view here. This is the posterior view here, schnoz this way, so to speak. And we have an erectile tissue that is homologous to the male penis, or you could say the male penis is homologous to the female clitoris. In part, I would prefer to put it that way, since the fundamental default gender for everyone actually is female. So none of us can exist without an X chromosome, at least one. Those of us who get two X chromosomes then get to, utilize a little bit of backup in the system of alleles and genes in case something is not going perfectly well with one of the X chromosomes. We have another X chromosome to mosaically get turned on and fill in the needed genes. So there are certain advantages that the female has by having two X chromosomes. The main the main activity of the Y chromosome is to simply turn off the female pathway and to create hair on ears. Not exactly a great selling point for Y chromosomes, but nevertheless, males do get to have one X chromosome in order to simply come to term and exist. So here we have the erectile tissue. We have the right here listed for us here, the clitoris. The external urethral orifice is listed right next to it. We'll get a closer look at all of these features individually. We have the birth canal or the reproductive canal, depending on which direction you're going in. And this is sort of a Route 80. It's got two directions, east and west, or north and south, something like this. So the idea here is that we have a vaginal vestibule here. Let's look at the terminology. I don't see them listing that properly, but at any rate, we do have a labia minora, a labia majora. Between the left and right labial surfaces, we have a vestibule into which there is an opening for the vaginal passageway. The vagina, as you can see, is going to circle around the cervical canal right here. This is the uterus. In this case, we see the uterus anteverted, facing the forward direction. Oftentimes it could be also retroverted depending on age of the individual. Another detail here is that this is a very muscular organ right here. It's a muscular organ that is, how would I say, benefited by the surface protein receptors for oxytocin, so that a certain amount of activity can happen muscularly. Notice the close proximity to the large intestine, the rectum, the anus is right there. Notice also, let's see here, we have something right here is the greater vestibular gland that provides lubrication. Okay, and what we're not seeing is the anterior view, the ventral view of this organ, which would show us that it has sort of a triangular quality to it with angles on upper left and upper right. In that angle would be three items here, which I've actually listed for you, 1, 2, and 3. So let's take a look here at the one item, of course, would be the ovarian ligament that holds the ovary. Here it's somewhat hidden by the presence of the position of the view, but that would be the ovary. That would be also the ovarian ligament, represents one of the things that's emerging from that corner of the uterus. A second thing that's emerging is this uterine tube. Okay, oviduct, uterine tube, fallopian tube are equivalent terms. Notice the narrowness of it at this location. Notice the widening up here at what's referred to as the infundibulum or ampulla, actually. It widens completely, and we have somewhat over 20 different little fingers that are actively sort of caressing the ovary and preparing for ovulation, which hopefully will not be missed. If the egg is missed, which would be a difficulty, then the egg would fall down in one of these locations. Before we note that, I just want to list the third thing here, which is the round ligament, which is a vestigial feature from fetal development and birth. Okay, so I want to sort of catch the nomenclature here. Let's see what we have. Here we go. Yeah, they are showing us here. The recto-uterine pouch. Notice that we have, this is the peritoneal cavity right here. And I had mentioned to you in previous episodes in the digestive system that the peritoneal cavity is a potential space and nothing is living there, but there is an exception to the rule. The rule is that the ovary must communicate with the oviduct, and if they're covered by visceral peritoneum, they cannot do that. So the visceral peritoneum actually ends right before you get to these features of the female anatomy, and these features are living inside the peritoneal cavity. Okay, so there's going to be a peritoneal serous membrane right here and going this way, and this region back here, this sort of portion of the sac, then is referred to as the recto-uterine pouch. Please make a note of that. If the egg drops, it may go there. If the egg drops and slips this way, we have another pouch that's right here next to the urinary bladder, and that pouch is referred to as the vesico-uterine pouch. Now, let me make clear here that the fertilization of the egg occurs almost upon immediate arrival at the oviduct. And it takes something like 4 or 5 days for the egg to travel this distance. And so fertilization, which has to happen within the first 24 hours, is going to happen right where this little line is right there. Do you see that? And should the egg be dropped for any reason after fertilization, or should the egg not make it to this location, rest assured that there's going to be a vast supply of sperm at this location in a sexually active couple who are either intentionally or not intentionally trying to create a newborn. And so the idea here is that in addition to the egg that may have dropped into one of these locations, there's quite possibly hundreds, thousands of sperm, and maybe more than tens of thousands of sperm that are going to circulate down into these areas right here during active sexual encounters. So that's these are things that need to be, how shall I say, not only noted in detail, but in sort of a general idea of how the flow works in this area. Okay?